Peace and blessings to all of God's children on this Truth and Right, Loving Light Thursday morning. I've been brooding over some last couple of days, and the pieces came together this morning, and I'm going to bring it to you. I'm going to start it off, though, telling you about an experience I had while I was housed in USP Leavenworth, Kansas. USP Leavenworth, Kansas is the oldest federal penitentiary they have. They actually, when I got there, they had pictures in different places showing when the prison opened up, they brought people there with horse and wagons. They had literally locking up. I think Jesse James was there. A lot of famous criminals been there, but I digress. While I was there, and this was in the early 80s, I was in my early 30s. It was about over 40 years ago. And a friend of mine came and told me, he said, hey, there's some brothers here that is from Israel. Matter of fact, they lived in Jericho. And it was just so radical to me because at this time, the concept of somebody of African descent being in Israel was just beyond me. As I searched all the news broadcasts, CNN, the ones around at that time, I could never remember seeing a black person that I could identify in my mind as being an inhabitant of Israel. Okay. So I met these brothers, really nice. I mean, perfect gentlemen. And we had a light discussion. We was out on the prison yard. So they asked me, they said, brother, how old are you? See, I was in my early 30s then. I was, full of youth, full of myself, as we say. And I said, well, man, I'm 30-something, He said, well, brother, the teachings that we have to give you, you're going to have to come back a little bit later because right now, there's some other things. And I didn't get it. I took it personal, like, rejection. You know how we handle it, anything, relationships. So they said, well, look, let me ask you a question. And this, he could see that I was visibly upset about it. He said, let me ask you a question. He said, what is your studies of the Bible? You read the Bible? I said, yes, I studied it quite a bit. I said, I'm always in a hole. Nothing else to do. He said, I bet you think John the Baptist in scripture was eating bugs. I said, well, the scripture, I took him right to it, Matthew 3:4. And the same John had his raiment of camel's hair and a leather girdle about his loins, and his meat was locusts and wild honey. You also find this same scripture in Mark chapter 1, verse 6. But they broke out laughing. I mean, now I'm getting another type of pistol. I said, it's so funny. I mean, I'm reading it right from the word. I tell you. They said, if he was eating these bugs that you think in your mind, he couldn't have ate but every 7 years because they only, I never thought of that. But this brings me to the topic of this video. Are we being prepared or are we being programmed? Are we being prepared? See, preparation has a very great impact on how successful we're going to be or whether we're going to be dumbed down to experience another form of psychological slavery or dependence on somebody else. Now, if you bear with me, I promise you're going to be blessed richly through this video. I left those guys, that was in United States Penitentiary Leavenworth. Some years later, and I can't come up with the exact amount of years, I guess 10 or 15 years later, but I was in my 40s at that time. And I ran across these guys, federal prison system, they constantly move you around. And I caught up with these guys, like I said, about 10 years later, you know. And when they saw me, you know, we saw each other, we embraced. You know, it wasn't no hardship because I had learned at that time to recognize certain things, you know. And one of the principles that I live by is, still I practice to this day. I drew it from my experience with these brothers. But listen, as far as John the Baptist eating locusts, those brothers, and I tell you, it was a very difficult original meeting. I went back, and I'm going to read you the definitions from the Webster's. Definition number 1 is a large and mainly tropical grasshopper with strong powers of flight. It is usually solitary, but from time to time there is a population explosion and it migrates in vast swarms that cause extensive damage to crops. Now, this is the bug. This is definition number 2. The large edible pod of some plants of the pea family, in particular the carob, C-A-R-O-B bean, carob bean, which is said to resemble a locust. I had an understanding that was right on the surface, what they call superficial understanding. I had to go deeper to get the truth. So do y'all see where I'm coming from here with this title here? Are we being prepared? Or are we being programmed? Now, from that story, let's come to the current times and what all we got going on. Here's my next question. After, are we being prepared or are we being programmed? All right? On the continent of Africa, you have every valuable resource known to man. The country, the land, has all, it has all these things. But the people that live on the land have absolutely no control of it. Matter of fact, most of the financial giants that you find controlling that wealth in Africa, they're not even people of the land. They have came in. There was a conference in the 1930s called the Berlin Conference. Look it up. And Europe sat down and decided, these were countries, governments, you know, institutions, super rich families and everything else. They had the physical means to just take over all the resources, mining rights and everything. They didn't do anything for the people. These faceless entities came in. Jomo Kenyatta, who was president of Kenya, he led a movement in Kenya called the Mau Mau, well, he's a part of it. He said, all we know, the missionaries came in, they gave us the Bible, taught us how to pray. We went down to pray. When we got back up, we had the Bible, they had the land. Now, don't get it twisted. This is not an attack on the Bible or the church. They're catching enough as it is. People are used here in this society right now. They think they're championing a noble cause when they're only being used through programming. So you have good people, in a lot of instances, think they're doing something for the upliftment of humanity. Here in America, Black Lives Matter. You know, it was a whole lot of mess about this, and this was current. Yeah, all lives matter. Yeah, all lives are precious before God. But now, did you know that most of that money never went to the target theme of it? It had absolutely nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, take a look around now. It shows you what I mean. We have all types of organizations who are now looking at us. Hey, ain't nothing we can do. Huh? Well, I mean, nothing we can do. We have been successfully programmed to look for something, and we don't even know what we're looking for. See, the scriptures tell us that we should try all spirits. The teachings of Christ said over and over and over, you will know them by their fruits. You got all types of things in social media. Everything that was developed 50, 60 years ago is being dismantled. But why? And no, it's not centered here in America. It's because the wealth and well-being of forces, most of us don't even have time enough to go into and look at, like with the brothers I was telling you about, I wanted to study with. I had a superficial conditioning, a tip of my nose sort of awareness of things. Well, we are all more than the skin that we're in. We can sit down and pontificate for hours about what truth is. But I'm going to ask you again, are you really certain in your heart of hearts that you're being prepared, or are you being further programmed? This incident, which started off very ugly for me, opened the door to me finding out whose I am and who I am. I'm suggesting that strongly in this particular video. We have to be more than what we are told. Wisdom teaches us human beings think. Only God knows. Human beings on their best day can only think. But with God knows all things. Why? He's creator of all things, maintainer of all things. And when it's time for justice to be brought, he's going to bring an end to things. So I'm going to ask you again, are you being prepared, or are you being programmed to support things that are other than God? I ain't even going into that too deep. That's why I made a video, short video. I said, if you want to really know who the devil is, be a student of history. History clearly tells you who the devil is and the devil's operations. But if you don't go deep within yourself to find out, first and foremost, the journey of 1,000,000 miles starts with one step. You have to go inside yourself and see what's wrong with you. My people have a self-hate issue. And their self-hate is due to this misguided notion of the illusion of inclusion. The illusion of inclusion. The laws in this land, the Dred Scott decision, I told you the first law that ever was passed by the Supreme Court, says that people of my persuasion are 3/5 human. We have been reduced to wild animals subject to anything, and we should be tickled to death whenever any power or entity beyond our control can give us something. But that same agency tells us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we ain't even got shoes. We have a hellish situation with our people right now. And we are talked to as if it's our problem. Well, maybe it is. But here again, I'm going to ask you this morning, are we being prepared or being programmed? No, I don't need it. I'm saying this is what we need to ask ourselves. Take a look around. The evidence, the fruits is all around you. It's telling you what it is. We want to pretend like, oh, none of this is happening. That's called delusional. You're in denial. Wake up and live, my people. I pray something comes out of it that helps you better find out whose you are and who you are and prepare yourself for what is to come. Peace and blessings.